A question I've gotten a lot here in the past few months has been about my position on using AI, especially generative AI here at Esoterica. And people seem genuinely concerned as to whether the art that I use is AI generated, whether my scripts are generated using AI, or even if I'm actually AI. I hope I'm not AI. It's a full tilt AI Gnosticism. But to be honest, these are perfectly reasonable questions and concerns given the explosion of AI slop on basically every platform online. I mean, it's gotten so bad that I'm seeing my own content being fed through LLMs and then AI art generated and then uploaded to YouTube within hours, minutes of me publishing an episode of Esoterica. Also, if you ever see any of those channels, please let me know so I can report them and you can report them too. But for someone who doesn't know this channel, it's not really clear who's ripping off who. So I want to say a few relatively off-the-cuff things about AI and basically how it's not going to have a place here at Esoterica. But to start, AI is just a technology, and like the introduction of all technologies, we humans have done what we basically always do. We implement a technology well before the ethical or social considerations and ramifications of whether this technology is even appropriate for human dignity and flourishing are made. Can never implies should, but with the infinite vampirism that is corporate shareholders and the geopolitical pressures that our politicians are under, that if we don't deploy it first, and they will, here we are. But this isn't a question of being for or against a technology, even specifically as regards artificial intelligence. I take Bernard Stiegler's point that the human being is fundamentally not about being natural in any way, but actually in our prostheses. This water bottle is just a developed prosthesis of my cupped hand. Book is just an eldritch exterior memory. My glasses are simply warping light to fit my already warped lenses. The bullet is a development of the spear, itself a punch compressed to maximize trauma. We just are our technologies, including spiritual technologies, which I talk about all the time here on the channel. So the question is not whether or not technology distorts, alienates, or improves some inherent natural humanity. The question, so far as I can tell, is what kind of humanity is produced via the technologies that we adopt, that we prioritize, and that we allow to proliferate. And when I ask that question, specifically about the relationship of generative AI in terms of what I work on here on the channel, the answer to that question becomes pretty clear, pretty fast. What AI seems to produce when it interacts with the material that I care about is a sterile, misinformed morass whose content is tantamount to a mockery of the material that people, real historical people, who were hunted, shamed, repressed, mocked, tortured, and in some case horribly executed for creating. I'll give just a few examples of this. I've tinkered around, admittedly, with generating Esoterica scripts and art using a few of these platforms, honestly, as a kind of potential April Fool's Day prank. And while the facts are often right, they're only often right, and bizarre errors are delivered with the same inhuman confidence by these AIs. That is, until you correct them and then the AI cowers only to inflate the pride of the prompter. Those facts lack any depth of analysis, and facts without worldview are just trivia. Further, the art that it generates is perhaps somehow even more deplorable. Pseudo-Latin, pseudo-Hebrew, pseudo-spherote, pseudo-alchemical symbols, pseudo-sigils, pseudo-manuscripts, all robbed, stolen from human artists, now and historically, and then knit together into a monstrous simulacrum. While not a practitioner myself, I do profoundly understand and appreciate just how much esotericists in history and now invest profoundly in the power of language, symbolism, and iconography. And this AI art, at least from what I've seen, is seemingly a spiritual inversion of those aims. For instance, the aim of the increased dignity of the human being. Rather, this is a semiotics of mockery, where the dignity of artists and history are all garbled together, all the while their humanity and ours just seem to be the punchline of a vicious joke told just before opening bell. I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, the more that I interacted with these AIs, I began to experience myself and them as not just spiritually vacant, but somehow malevolent and corrosive of the very numinous qualities that drew me to this material in the first place. And I suppose it shouldn't be surprising that the vampirism of the market should give birth to seemingly demonic intelligences at some level. Further, this generative AI stuff only seems to be able to deliver such content to basically industrial strength plagiarism. The same companies wishing to scrape every data source and rob every artist in history for their LLMs and their training data are also actively seeking the destruction of important sources of knowledge like the Internet Archive. This is a truly hideous masterclass, a truly hideous world-class combination of hypocrisy and gatekeeping. Finally, the material reality is that these data centers are planted without consent in largely working class neighborhoods like the one that I grew up in, like the one that most of us live in, only to rob the water and pollute the air of the local environment. Welcome to the age of the dark satanic data center, if I can crib some William Blake. All the while this is just driven by not just inhuman desires, but the explicitly anti-human goal of making people, me, you, us, seemingly making people redundant. We can return to Bernard Stiegler's point and ask again, what kind of humanity is being created in the process of this prosthesis? And the answer, I think, is horrifying. It's a humanity which demands the erasure of humanity, all in the interest of shareholders and technocrats and politicians. Of course, I can already hear the response. You're just a Luddite. Yeah, I am. In the strict historical sense that the term was developed because the Luddites were not opposed to technology. I'm not opposed to technology. They were opposed to technologies that shredded and erased their humanity and labor without their consent in the interest of the profits of the few. Again, William Blake referred to this as the dark satanic mills, and I think William Blake is a patron saint if anyone is around here. I'm not opposed to technology. I'm opposed to technologies imposed upon us and upon our communities, which rob from intellectuals and artists to generate spiritually bereft, race-to-the-bottom content in the express interest of erasing our humanity, all for the titanic grift of empowering cynical politicians and further enriching the predator class of tech billionaires. Yeah, I'm pretty opposed to that. So please, call me a Luddite as I actively resist that process in the admittedly tiny and insignificant ways that I can. So what does that mean for Esoterica? Basically that I'm going to continue to avoid as much as I can generative AI, LLMs, AI art, etc. I'm going to avoid it as much as humanly possible. You'll see a real person on screen, me, using my real voice, working from a script I wrote without using AI tools and illustrating content without using AI art. And all that's made possible, of course, by a huge range of technologies and companies, none of which are morally or philosophically neutral, and I won't pretend otherwise. Some of them are just downright evil and predatory. That's the compromise we make as far as being a human being. But at least with me being a human being on this channel with all my flaws, making those decisions, you know who's responsible for this content. Me. And being able to take precisely that responsibility is simply constitutive of what I take to be freedom. All decisions like these are born out of our commitment to various values and also how we negotiate and compromise those values along the way. But at least now in the spring of 2026, these are the values and admittedly the hypocrisies that I'm holding on to. So Esoterica will remain firmly Luddite as much as possible vis-a-vis generative AI until I see a very good reason to do otherwise. And before making any decision on that, I'm going to check in with you all, my audience, and be transparent about any changes I make. It takes years to gain your trust, especially on topics like this. And trust me, it only takes moments to lose it. And I don't take your trust for granted. Now, is this a perfect or even a best solution? Of course not. That's not the world that we live in. I can't at all claim to even understand, frankly, the state of all this stuff going on and how it changes so rapidly to even make a claim that I'm making anything approaching an ideal choice. It just hovers between some being amount of, I guess, being arbitrary and some degree of hypocrisy, like basically all moral decisions. I don't weigh in often my personal beliefs or politics or philosophy on the channel, mostly because this just isn't the place for it. I'm really not of importance in all this material. This material is what matters, not me. I mean, we have enough main character syndrome running around all the time that I don't want to be another main character. But this is a place where I have to admit there is a personal moral decision being made, and it does have an impact on the channel. And given that, I want to be as transparent as I can be about it. Not using AI might mean slower content creation. It might even mean eventually being swamped by other AI channels. Frankly, I don't know. But if what I'm doing is boarding a sinking ship, then at least it's a ship that I basically can claim to have built myself. So what changes here going forward for Esoterica? Nothing, basically. Just rest assured that a real person is behind this camera. I wrote this and all the other content you're going to hear by myself, basically, unless otherwise stated. And I'd rather us meditate on real historical art and manuscripts while we contemplate these beautiful ideas at Esoterica than on AI-generated pseudo-art. Esoterica will continue to be the work of a human being, this human being, with all my flaws, featuring the work of all these important historical human beings with all their genius, in the hopes of building a humanity of dignity and flourishing for us all, together, better informed by the great genius of Western esotericism. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and thank you for watching Esoterica and for taking the time to listen to this ideas about AI that aren't really typically what I do on the channel, but I appreciate you taking the time to think about this with me, and I look forward to the lively debate in the comment section. But thank you for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.